Welcome to this quick whiteboard session on how to write relatable content and captions that come from the heart. I decided to do this because I actually had a client who reminded me a lot of me. A lot of myself. So before I get started, I really needed to tell you that if this is an area that you find a little bit hard to do, right? If everybody's telling you, you need to be writing stories from the heart. You need to be talking not so much from your brain, but from in here. If you keep hearing, the way to write content is write relatable content that is going to evoke emotion, and you're like scratching your head and be like, but my thoughts are in my head, right? How do I talk from the heart? I'm gonna tell you something. That was something that was really hard for me to do, and now it's almost automatic, and I love doing it. So I thought I would give you a little bit of a primer to help you out with it. So hi everybody, my name is Coveney, and I'm a lead generation expert for online coaches, which means that I help coaches get clients first before they worry about their website and before they worry about getting everything perfect and the perfect funnel and everything working. Get clients first. I teach you how to do that, how to engage with your audience, and how to turn more followers into clients. So that's the kind of stuff you can expect in my feed and in my mailing list. And if you actually go to the link in my bio right now, there's the link to get my emails where I teach you this stuff and I give you more invitations and opportunities to learn about how to get clients first. So this is what I kind of wanted to talk about today. So let me start by telling you, what was it like for me? And you have to tell me if you relate to this. So if you're watching here on replay, definitely leave me some comments and tell me if this sounds like you at all. Okay, so I have been working in corporate for 15 years, right? The corporate environment is not the place where you go and get spiritual and where you think about motivation and where you think about inspiration and where you think about being independent and doing exactly what you want to do. It's just not that kind of place. So it's the kind of place where you can thrive and you can really go the distance if you pretty much meet people's expectations, right? If you exceed people's expectations in a very particular area. So from my perspective, that was a very easy life because I consider myself to be very intelligent. So I would see what other people were doing and I would see what it took. And I just started taking risks, right? I would speak up. I would give my ideas. I never let anybody stop me or stifle me so I just kept rising up the ranks, right? This is not that hard. You just do your job, do it better than everybody else, get a good reputation, you'll continue to get good jobs, right? It was very easy. So when I came into the online world and I started to learn more about, speaking from the heart, I'm like, who cares? Who cares about the heart? People just want to learn, right? People want the strategy and people want the step-by-step and they want to know how to do this, right? So can I just tell them how to do that? Right? Like my first brilliant idea was to create a course where I would teach people how to create WordPress sites. I'm like, that's what people want. Of course, that's what people want. So that's just what I did, right? Turns out, the more clients I've gotten, the more programs I have signed up for, the more I started to realize that the way that we all interact with each other and the way that we purchase services and purchase products, it's not because we need the information, because that's what Google is for. It's because we relate to that person who's teaching us, right? Like I would be on the phone with someone and I want to sign up and work with them because I wanted to work with them, not because I felt like they had a magic solution or they had the magic touch or they had the only program that would help me. It was because I related to them. Okay, I want to spend more time with them. I want to pick their brain. I want to be close to them. I want to learn everything about how they think about the world. And I need them to affect my own vision of my life. And it had nothing to do with information that I could just very easily go and Google about, right? So once I realized that, I'm like, oh, shoot. How the heck am I going to do that? Because, I mean, there is an episode of my last podcast, right? My current podcast is The Global Phenomenon, where I talk to millionaire coaches and their true startup stories. My last podcast was called Trailblazing Out of Corporate Life, and it was really, really focused on teaching the strategy. This is how you do it, right? There was a little bit of mindset sprinkled here and there, but there was a lot of this is what you do. Let me just tell you what to do, right? Like that's what that podcast was about. And episode 30, you actually see me kind of breaking my brain and starting to work with someone who was very, very heart-centered, right? Somebody that I admire greatly. She was my mentor for 2 whole years. And if you go back, like seriously, like inacoveney.com/30, I think that's like that will take you there. I think so, /30. That takes you to that episode where I'm here meeting with my mentor. And this is like a live thing where I'm, everybody in our mentorship program is watching, and it's her coaching me on how to stop thinking from my head and start thinking from my heart. And you can see how hard that was for me to get broken, right? And I was trying really hard to be there with her and be like, okay, how do I do this? How do I start to think with the heart and less with the brain? And she's watching me basically like taking notes, and she's like, Ina, are you writing things down? I'm like, yeah. She's like, put that away. I'm like, okay. You can see that like happening like real time. And that was one of my first experiences really figuring out how to stop thinking only about the strategy and really start thinking about how do I relate to the people that are following me? How do I like put myself out there in a way that is not just, hey, I'm just going to teach you the 1, 2, 3 and the ABC. Go to Google for that, right? Like, how do I get people to actually want to hang out with me, right? To actually, want to pick my brain, to actually want to see. I'm like, oh, for that, people need to get to know me. But do I want them to get to know me? Is that necessary? And I'm going to tackle some of those questions here, okay? So I'm going to tell you, when I realized this, that really people buy and engage online because they relate to a particular person and their story. Once I started to realize that, I'm going to tell you, because I was very much in my brain, I'm like, okay, I'm going to become a student of all things vulnerability. Okay? I'm like, vulnerability is where it's at, right? I'm here thinking like, I'm running a business and the business needs vulnerability, so I need to go and find out what vulnerability freaking is, right? Because I had no idea how to do this. I'm like, I have no idea how to get out of my own head. So I went and I watched everything that Brené Brown has ever put out there. Okay, I became a student of Brené Brown. Before she had her podcast, I was looking up podcasts with her. I was looking up anything that she had out there, audiobooks. I started just becoming a consumer of Brené Brown stuff. And it helped somewhat, to understand what she believed, vulnerability is and all that stuff. But it wasn't until I started to create my own definition of what it is. I see you, Valeria. Valeria, yes, Valeria, big fan of Brené Brown. She's awesome, right? So I had to create my own definition of what vulnerability was, because I could see other coaches, people that I admire, people that I had been following for a while. I could see them crying in their car while doing a live stream, right? I'm like, maybe that's what vulnerability is, to cry in my car. Should I be crying in my car? Should I be live streaming when I'm crying in my car? What should I do? Seriously, I was looking for the formula. And I was going to my mentor, to that mentor that I told you about in that video, in the inacoveney.com/30, I think, video. I went back to her. I'm like, just give me the step-by-step. How do I do vulnerability. And she's like, I can't teach you that. You gotta find that, right? And she was very, very helpful in helping me crack that. You can see that in that session. So that's kind of the first thing that I wanted to come and tell you about, is about this concept of vulnerability. I had a client come to me and ask me, how do I write better Instagram captions? I have no idea how to do this. And I could see in her feed that she wasn't really talking a lot about herself, that she wasn't really talking a lot about her experience. And I asked her, like, is that hard for you to do, to talk about yourself? And she's like, yeah, because I don't feel like what I do has anything to do with who I am. Like she didn't say those words. I'm not going to put words in her mouth. But basically she's saying, like, I never went through the struggle that my client is going through. So I have no idea how to write a relatable caption for my client if my client is not me. I'm not trying to fix myself from before, right? I will address that too. Okay, I'm gonna get to that. But my first reaction to this was, listen, there is a reason why you became who you are, and there's a reason why you feel so passionate about the thing that you do. So the idea here is that you need to transmit that passion, right? You need to have a way to communicate to people that this passion is something that everybody should have, right? So in her case, if she had never suffered from the struggles that her ideal client was going through, at the very least, she could transmit that passion that she had for that thing that she does, that she helps her clients do. She can just put that out there and say, like, everybody should feel the way I feel about this, right? Because it's gonna make your lives better. So how did she do that if she's like, I don't think that any stories will like make sense? I have no idea how to create these stories. So I'm gonna start. There's a few points that I wanted to talk to you about, okay? The first one being vulnerability. And then I'm going to guide you through, and by the way, I know that this is backwards. I'm sorry. I ran out of time. Otherwise, I totally would have written this backwards for you. But this is what we're gonna do. I'm gonna tell you 3 key aspects, 3 key things that your Instagram post, that your relatable content should have in order for it to be like, check mark, is considered good relatable content. Okay, 3 keys. But first, it starts right here. It starts with your knowing what vulnerability is. So I'm gonna tell you how I defined it for myself. Okay, and this just helps me every single time. You can create your own definition of vulnerability. Okay, and by the way, this is for all of you who are like up here, like the way that I used to be, totally like brainiacs, like how am I supposed to speak from the heart? Like, this is for you, like how you can create a little formula for it. I feel like I have a sneeze coming and it doesn't want to come out. It's messing with my nasal balance. Okay, my definition of vulnerability became, and I think I wrote this in a post even, my definition of vulnerability is allowing or showing others who I really am, even if I don't think they would care. Showing people who I really am, like what my personality is, what are the things that I think about, what is my honest opinion about things, even if I don't think they would care. Okay? So, and that last part kind of hammers it home for me. Kind of like takes it home for me. The fact that if I don't think they care about what I have to say, if I don't think they care about my personality, I'm never gonna put it out there. So I just have to remind myself and remember that it doesn't matter if they care or not. It's allowing them to see the real you, right? Which is why I do a lot of posts showing people like what my real life is like, right? That was my definition of vulnerability. The sneeze is never gonna come out. You're gonna see me here crying and like getting like all like teary, and the sneeze is not gonna come out, but it's there. Okay, so that's kind of like one thing that I want you to keep in mind. Creating your own definition of vulnerability. Okay, what is it? Is it, for me, it's not crying in the car. That's not like a thing. That doesn't define vulnerability for me. It's letting people get to know me better. Okay, so my personality is in everything I do. Okay, the second thing that I wanted to talk to you about was self-awareness. So this is one thing that, I may fail in every test about, the heart and mind connection, right? Like, because I'm like always up here in my brain, right? But I ace every test on self-awareness. So I'm going to tell you a little bit of what self-awareness is. Self-awareness is knowing or being really curious about where your decisions are coming from, how you make your decisions and why you make those decisions. Okay, so if I say to you like, I'm an online coach, and somebody asks me, why are you an online coach? I know why, you guys. It's because I live my life, I have lived my whole life proving or trying to prove that I can do what I want, that I can do anything that I put my mind to, okay? And like every day for me is a race with myself to meet my highest potential. So the day, like anybody can say like, oh, Ina, you probably can't do that. I'm like, oh, heck I can't, right? The hell I can't, right? I have this thing to prove to myself in my life that I'm in my tombstone, right? And that I did everything to play the game of life to the fullest, right? That's a really intense value that I have in my life. So why am I an online coach? Because I saw it. I saw the freedom that it takes. I saw what the job entails, right? Like being here live with you guys, right? Which kind of like hits that performer dopamine hit for me in my brain, right? I see that it's about creation. It's about creativity. I'm like, I can do that, right? I see that it has a lot to do with technical stuff, right? You guys, I just had one of my tech sessions with one of my clients yesterday, and we only get like a half an hour for me to just like work their stuff. And she asked me in the beginning, she's like, well, can we share screen and I can do it and you can just guide me through doing it? And I told her like, we can't, because we are gonna run out of time. I can do things very, very quickly when it comes to technical things. And after she saw me do it, she was like, yeah, okay, I understand why you needed to do that yourself. The technical stuff really, really comes easily to me. So this is a job that has performance arts in it. This is a job that has freedom in it. This is a job that has unlimited potential in it. This is a job that has technical ability. And like, heck, I am sold. Why am I an online coach? This is the perfect job for me. And when I get together with clients, I try to transmit this excitement, right? I try to communicate to them. I'm like, you just chose the best job in the world, right? This is the job that has no limits. It has no limits. Nobody can tell you how high or low you can get. You can get as high as you want. So like, I am here working in my passion and working in what I like, the thing that I want to do forever, right? So I know why I made those decisions. And it is because I have this chip in my mind, this chip on my shoulder about living my life to my fullest potential. So my sneeze has decided to come out in a runny nose way, so I have to go get a tissue. I'll be back. I'm back. So, when it comes to self-awareness, whenever you think about that term, the term self-awareness, what that means is knowing why you make the decisions that you make. Okay, and knowing them intensely, knowing them as if you were talking to a therapist who's peeling your onion and telling you, where did that come from? Where did that come from? Right? It was funny because I was having a conversation with a friend of mine, and she's the CEO of 2 companies, right? She's somebody I adore. She was my client for a little bit a couple of years ago. I was coaching her on what she was doing, and we were just chatting, and she told me, wow, how are you able to get so much done with the 2 kids in the house, and how are you able to do all of this? And my answer was like, well, I had, it's gonna sound weird, I have a great relationship with my father now, but when I was growing up, he was always at work. So I said, Well, I had an absent father growing up, and I have a lot to prove that I can do things, right? I have a lot to prove to an absent father. And like that self-awareness, that's knowing where your motivations come from. And she was like, whoa, if that's where yours comes from, then I must be superwoman, because like same thing happened to me. And I'm like, you are the CEO of 2 companies, right? And she's like, oh shoot, yeah, you're right. So like I'm not saying that everybody who had that experience will have the same kind of drive, but I know where my drive comes from. My drive is trying to get my father's attention and get him to be proud of me. I know where that comes from. So if anybody has ever asked you, why do you do what you do? And you're like, oh, I liked it. I was fascinated by it. But why? Keep peeling that onion. What do you have to prove, and to whom? Okay, it could be to yourself, right? Were there any situations in your life growing up where you felt like you were not heard? You felt like you were not valued? You felt like you really didn't know what your life was going to be like? Or worse yet, that you know exactly what your life was going to be like and you didn't like it, right? Was there a pivotal point in your life that made you go, I don't want this anymore, right? What was that point, right? And if you can think of anything like negative that happened to you, any trauma that you had before, think about the people around you. What did you learn from the relationships that you had in your life? What were they teaching you by the way they were acting towards money, towards work, towards their health, towards rich people, right? Like, what were those lessons that were being ingrained in your mind? That's what self-awareness is knowing where your decisions came from. That's what self-awareness is. So why is this important to creating relatable content and captions? Because we're going to be talking about storytelling. And when we talk about storytelling, you gotta be in touch with your emotions, right? Now, I wasn't for a very, very long time. It took a long time for me to, use the fact that I was very curious about where my decisions were coming from, right? My self-awareness was high, but my connection to my emotions was low. I preferred to just squash them. I was aware that I was squashing them, right? But I preferred to squash them so that they wouldn't come out. So how do you take that, everything that you have gone through, and turn it into a good post, right? It seems like trivial. It seems like this is a lot of really heavy work just to create a post on Instagram, right? But if you've ever wondered how to create relatable content, that's where it comes from. Your ability to be vulnerable, which means, for me, it meant allowing people to get to know me as a person, even if I don't think they care, right? That's my definition of vulnerability. And number 2 is self-awareness, being curious about where your decisions come from. Seguida, you say, your wardrobe looks like a mirror image. Yeah, I can't switch it. Unfortunately, I can't. Yeah, Seguida, thank you so much. I can't. If I had had more time, I would have just written it backwards so you guys can see it. I'm sorry. So I wanted to tell you, having those 2 pillars, those 2 foundations, right? Vulnerability and self-awareness. I'm going to tell you what are the three key things that your captions need to have, or that your content needs to have, for it to be considered like good, relatable content. Okay, so this is where I get to use my brain power, and I give you step by step. So I'm going to start with one that sounds really trivial, and you're going to be like, oh, gee, Ina, thanks, duh. But I'm going to tell you why it's not as trivial as it sounds. Okay, and since I know that this is a mirror image, I'm just going to write. Okay, I'll write it backwards for you. Okay, story. Number 1, there has to be a story. I'm going to define story for you, okay? Because this one, it's still hard for me, because we feel like when we go online and we create a post, we just want to say what we need to say and get out, right? Like I've written posts like that, like, hey, by the way, you are awesome, goodbye, right? Like I just give you a fact, give you a statement, give you something to hang on to motivate you, and that's it, goodbye, right? For a relatable post to get created, you need a story. Do you know what a story is? Something that has a beginning, a climax, and an end, a resolution. Like literally, I'm talking like English class storytelling, right? Okay, climax, resolution. Okay, let's call this the setup. And yes, I'm writing this backwards. Okay, a story has a setup, a climax, and a resolution. So this is important because just because I told you, hey, so I went to the market and somebody was mean to me, right? That's not a story. That's a fact. That's just something that happened. Okay, a story would be, you have to set it up, right? What was what's the context of the story, right? Is I was feeling really down, right? Or I was feeling really happy. Let's do it this way. Okay, setup. I was feeling really happy. I was on top of the world. I just signed a new client and I walk into the grocery store totally expecting to just get my stuff with my mask on and then get out and continue with my life. I even wanted to get Nutella to celebrate because I love hazelnut spread. That's what I was doing. And then there was this one person who was watching me testing the produce, and they just went and screamed a racial slur at me for touching the produce, and then they called the manager because I was touching produce, and I just felt so bad because I didn't even know I was doing something wrong, right? Like, it's like the climax of the conflict. It happened. Oh my God, I feel so much better. Okay? Then, they had to call the manager, and then I was trying to explain myself, and I started to cry because I was like, why would this happen right now? But you know what I learned? What happened was, the manager completely understood. They just gave me new produce. They quarantined the produce that I had touched, and I was able to get on my merry way. But what I learned that day was, right, that is a story. It's not just coming in and giving you a fact. It's not just coming in and telling you, oh, that happened to me. It's setting up the stage, giving you the climax of the story, something dramatic that happened, and then giving you the resolution. But then after, etc., right? So why am I pointing this out? Because we are so tempted to just spend our entire time in every paragraph just giving out statements, right? Giving out statements and possible questions. Bless you. Thank you, Valeria. It happened. So this is important. So I want you to remind yourself that when you're sitting down to write great content, to write a great post, what story can you attach to it? Okay? So, and like I said, like now I do these things automatically. Now it's just like, okay, if I'm going to tell a story, I have to remember that it has to have these 3 steps. And it doesn't have to be a really long story either, right? It can just be like, this is how I was feeling. And then this is what happened, and this is how it resolved, okay? Which kind of takes me to point number 2, very related to this. Can I do the number 2 backwards? Okay, there we go. Number 2, I'm writing backwards. Number 2, emotion. When you think of your story, there has to be, like, you have to be able to name it, like a 3-year-old kid learning what emotions are, right? You have to be able to name what the emotion is. Is this story going to produce, is it going to evoke sadness? Is it going to evoke happiness? Is it going to evoke, a feeling of calm? Is it going to evoke a feeling of anxiety, right? There has to be an emotion associated with it. If I'm just going in and out and just giving a statement and getting out, it's kind of like, oh yeah, cool, that was nice, right? But in a story, you gotta be able to name that emotion. Not in the post, right? But you gotta be able to say, as the writer, right, who's trying to evoke an emotion, you gotta be able to say, I want people, when they read this story, I want to pull at their heartstrings, to get them to feel something. I want them to feel sad with me. I want them to feel excited with me. I want them to feel like their brain is short-circuiting with me, right? You gotta know what emotion you're evoking. Don't just trust that the story will do the job by itself. After you write your story, which by the way doesn't have to be very long, okay, you don't get a lot of space in captions anyway, but when you're writing your story, you are going to be thinking about this. So write it first, and it's like, okay, what emotion am I evoking? Okay? Because your resolution brings us to point number 3. Okay? Which is if I can do it here. You want me to do it here? I can do that then. Okay. Ready? Oh! It's going backwards again. It's really hard to do. Okay. Let's put it here. It's a reframe, teach, shift. Okay, here we go. I'm writing backwards for you guys, okay? Number 3, okay, is going to be, thank you, Sayida. Okay, number 3, your story, your post has to have a final resolution that would allow people to reframe how they've always thought about something, all right? Teach them about a new way to think about the problem and provide a shift for them, okay? So why is this important? I'm gonna tell you why. Because there's a lot of posts out there who do a great job at writing a story and at evoking an emotion, and then they leave it there, right? I'm gonna tell you, when I write vulnerable posts, right, and I have a written post about my depression, about my fight, my battle with depression. I have written posts about being bullied when I was little, right, and how that has informed the way that I act now and having so much to prove, right? I have done a ton of content about things that have happened to me that have not been good things, right? But I gotta have a purpose for talking about it. I don't want the emotion that I evoke to be pity, to be people feeling sorry for me, for just for the sake of humanizing me, right? Sorry. I don't want to just humanize myself. This is not the purpose of it. The purpose is to create relatable content that comes from the heart. So if my trade, right, is business coaching, I want other business coaches to move a little bit closer to their goals every time that they hear me speak, every time they hear me talk, every time they read a post. It should help them a little bit more, okay? So with that in mind, having a purpose, all of these things, by the way, all of this is wrapped in a big hug of purpose and truth. Okay? Why did I say that? Why purpose and truth? There's gotta be a reason for it. I gotta, more than just wanting to evoke emotion, you guys, because I can go and write the saddest post in the world and get people crying their eyes out. But what does that have to do with business coaching, right? And that's my area, by the way. So if you are a health coach, if you are a dancer, right? What do you want people to feel after? What do you want people to learn from it so that they move a little bit closer in their goals? That's the purpose of it. And you're just using the story kind of as an excuse to help them have that catalyst action, right? To help them have that move that's gonna get them closer to their goal, right? The story is just the excuse. I don't know if you guys have seen, there's so many Super Bowl commercials that pull at your heartstrings, right? That you see, little kids doing something cute, or puppies, or families, right? And it's the ad for a car or for an insurance company, right? Like the story, the relatable nature of it is trying to get people to move closer in what it is that your area is, what it is your field is. So I talk about my bullying because people, online coaches, people who want to coach online, we have traumas, and talking about them is important so we can motivate others, right? I have this saying that I use it kind of as a tagline for my podcast, which is, when life hands you lemons, you inspire the world to make lemonade. That's what online coaches do. We don't make the lemonade ourselves. We turn around and we inspire others. So the way that we inspire others is through story, self-awareness, vulnerability, everything that I'm talking about today. And it has to be wrapped in a huge hug of purpose. There's a reason why you're creating this, and truth, which means that we're not fakers, that we don't manufacture these stories, these emotions just for the sake of an outcome, right? It's very important that even though I'm teaching this to you, this is a strategy for you to be able to have a much closer relationship with your followers, that this is just a tool for you to speak your truth, right? We are not fakers here. We want to relate to people, heart to heart. And sometimes for all of us who are very brainiac minded, sometimes it's hard to do that. So this is just a tool for us to be able to connect like human beings, right? So this is kind of what I wanted to show you. So I have been, this is something that I just kind of do automatically now. Every time that I sit down, you guys know, the process that I go through in my mind before I sit down and write a post, I ask myself, how am I feeling right now? Why am I feeling this way? If somebody else out there is feeling the same way, what can I give them as a reframe, teach them, or a shift to help them move closer to their goals? Because maybe I'm still feeling crummy about something that just happened, but that doesn't mean that I don't have something to say to somebody else who's coming right behind me. So that's how I come up with my post. I sit down, how am I feeling right now? Why am I feeling this way? How can I help someone who's feeling this way too? Boom, that's where my post comes from. And if I'm feeling this way because something happened, I tell the story. I tell the story from beginning to end, the setup, the climax, and the resolution, right? And I'm very aware that I want people to feel outrage when they hear the story. I want people to feel sad. I want people to feel happy. I want people whatever. But in the end, I need them to move closer to their goals by providing them a reframe, teach them something, or some kind of shift. So I really hope that this was helpful. I wanted to let you know that I've actually been doing a really hush-hush promotion of my program on my mailing list. I have not been posting about this on social media. It was kind of like a spur of the moment, just you know what? I'm going to give my best bonuses just for a couple of days and see who's out there that has been looking for help with their business to engage better with their audience, to get more clients from the followers that they currently have, and they can join us in the Get Clients First membership. I'm just going to put it out there. So I'm sending one more email tonight that has all of those details. So if you want to get that email with all the details so you can read everything about it, the price, who is this for, refund policy, what do we do in there, what are the things that you get, what are the 3 amazing bonuses, which include one-on-one time. I've been doing these 90-minute strategy sessions with some of my clients who jump into the program, and they have been just revolutionary. They give you a brand new perspective on their business. You get clarity right away. So I've been wondering, who here needs this? That is already in my mailing list and is already listening to what I'm saying. So if you want to check out that email, because it's gonna go out later today, maybe in a couple of hours, go to the link in my bio and just put in your name and email. And at 6 o'clock, you're going to get that email with the full details. So take a look at it and let me know if you have any questions. I'm checking my email 24/7. So let me know if you have any questions, but that's super exciting. And I see that Seji that you wrote, you would be great at learning choreography with your ability to transpose right and left. I don't know about that, Seji. I'm gonna tell you, I auditioned for the dance team when I was in high school, and they told me that I didn't have any grace. I was graceless. That's what happened. So I don't know if dancing is for me, but writing backwards, I got that down. All right, guys, thank you so much for being here. I really hope that this was helpful, and I will see you in my emails and back in the feed. And thank you for putting up this like allergic volcano that has been waiting to erupt in my nose. I'll talk to you guys soon. Have a wonderful weekend. Bye, everybody.